Recording in progress.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I got to get rid of that. Drives me nuts. And get rid of that. Then I'll shoot myself in the head. Let's see if I can bring up anything that looks reasonable. Okay. Um, Welcome to the CCS June Linux SIG meeting. And tonight, does anybody have any questions or problems that they would like to try and have addressed? Boy, if everybody talks at the same time, we're not going to be able to figure out what's going on. All right, then
Well,
I'll get into the meeting if I have to. Earl, did you have something?
yeah, I did check on my Zoom and I do have 6012, and you're saying that's going to be a problem.
Well, that's one level behind. You should be on 6.1.0.
Ah, what the hell?
And are you using an app that you downloaded from the software store?
Well, I downloaded it via the KDE Neon uh,
Every
Discover
Linux has a
program.
store in it of software. Did you install it from there, or did you go out to Zoom and load it in from there?
I loaded it through the KDE Neon application for software updates, which is called Discover. You know, it uses PK conf.
That version usually is one or two releases behind.
Well, it must be because I just checked on it and it still
Uh,
has 6012.
I noticed that a long time ago. So I usually go out to Zoom itself and get my download from Zoom and install it in the Mint. You
Yeah,
might be able
okay.
to do the same thing on yours, but you'd have to uninstall what you've got before doing that, but
Yeah.
not now. All right. Uh, Hopefully that addresses that issue. At least I'm praying for that. Gosh darn that. All right. Anyway, getting into what I am doing tonight's a little bit different than what I've been doing in the past. What you are seeing here now, there used to be a program between 1 and 2 years ago that went under called distrotest.com. Now we have a new replacement. It's called Distro C, as in the Mediterranean Sea.com. And this gives you an online facility to go out and try out any of these particular ones, including like KDE Neon that Earl is on. Here's Linux Mint, a regular from Ubuntu branch. And here's the Linux Mint Debian edition, just to name three of them. So you have a whole bunch of possibilities here that you can take a look at. And knock your socks off. At least it gives you exposure to some of the Linux distros in a working environment, but it probably will not remember anything you do. When you log off, it's going to get rid of what your copy was and replace it with a beginning copy for the next person to use.
Do
Now,
we know how if do we know if the site is pretty safe, Tim? Or, I mean, it's safe. Distro C.
absolutely not.
Hmm.
The internet is not safe. And anybody who thinks the internet is safe is got a big problem right off the top. And I'm not joking when I say that. I'm real honest saying that the internet is a dangerous place and you never know when you're going to get hit with something. That's not a joke. You can think you're going to a real site and end up somewhere in another galaxy far, far away. All right, the next thing I've got, I hope, this is something for especially the newbies. I use DuckDuckGo instead of Google search. I stuck in a search value of Learn Linux for Dummies. This gives you some resources, uh, including some kind of an academy. You've got Linux for Dummy cheat sheet. You got how to get started with Linux, beginner's guide, complete beginner's guide to Linux, etc., etc. So I'm giving you that information so that if you need it, you can go to it, refresh your memory, and or learn what you don't know. Now I'm going to get out of those two. Next up, this is another one. This is, however, a site, and what it is Linux links is the search value. Here it is. This is a portal site. This gives you all kinds of software that you can search for as another possible location to download programs you may not find in your regular store. Odds are you will, but you can look here for some things. You've got home use, you got best software, you got reviews of software and what the reviewer thinks of the quality of a software application. You got series, info, and you can search for specific packages. I learned about some of these because of last Wednesday's APCUG Linux workshop. Somebody was asking for uh, an alternative to QuickBooks. And
Hmm.
I was being asked informally through the chat by Judy Tallur if I knew of any, and I didn't, but I did a lookup and I found two sites. And the next site that I'm going to bring up, the original address I had is different, but alternative2.net is the address. Don't worry about writing some of this stuff down. I have a handout that has this information. But generally speaking, you can put in, it used to be that you could put in your OS and get specific alternatives for your OS, but apparently they don't do that anymore. But I can put in, oops, wrong keyboard. This is the problem when you got multiple computers, multiple keyboards and mice. And it says here, Intuit QuickBooks, they have 27 alternatives to it. Doesn't mean right now they're having some kind of a problem on their system because I checked this out earlier. But normally speaking, they would have listed out the 27 and given you some information how many stars they get, stuff like that. And it doesn't mean it's going to be as good as QuickBooks. And they may be showing you with 27 versions, Windows, Mac OS, and Linux versions. So you have to be careful which version you get. So that's another resource. So I've given you now 3. Here's another one. Another resource. If any of you are doing a small business, and there's a lot of people that are doing 1 and 2 people small businesses, this might help you out. I don't know. I haven't tried this site. I got this from the APCUG meeting, and you might want to look at the various articles that they have a link to by category. So it gives you another resource if you need it, or if you know somebody else who is saying they're looking for software for a small business. Now you got a resource you can give them. Remember, we're all supposed to be helping each other out. Next up, this is something that's cute. Linux Tux Wallpapers. This is a wallpaper access site. It's all free. And these are some of the background wallpapers you can get. Install it on your, well, you download it to your download folders on your Linux. You then move it from downloads to pictures. Then you go into your settings. You then will take the settings, and there should be an option there for pictures that'll take you to the picture folder, and you select whatever one or ones you downloaded and chose. So these are all out there. This is a cute one. If you ever watched Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, and also Star Trek Enterprise. No, not the Enterprise. Enterprise 2. It was the second series. They had run-ins with the Borg, and this is we will assimilate you. So if you ever saw the series, that's what that one is. And you go down, and you got some that are anti Windows. That's one of them. And this is a neat one too. Here you go. Linux Insider. Linux is Insider. All right, whatever. Got Linux. You got umpteen different penguins. And earlier, Neon Linux uses a different icon than the penguin. Here you go. If you got an Apple, think Linux. This one might be contemplating suicide. I don't know. Right at the precipice of a cliff. So that's most of that. There's plenty of other sites out there with their own variations. Quite interesting. I just used a plain search. I said I wanted Linux free mascot wallpaper, and I ended up refining that to from mascot to tux, and got this as one of the sites. You basically have to know some of the various icons that are used, like the gecko is one of them for one or two different versions of Linux out there. Next up, OS Future. This is
So let's talk a little bit about operating systems. And I believe all of you can agree, like whenever someone mentions the operating system, there are basically just three options that could come to your mind. Either it's Microsoft Windows, or it's Apple, or it's Linux, right? And statistically, majority of the people, of course, are using the Windows. And statistics actually agree with that because there is a website such as StatCounter, which shows the global stats of the operating system usage, and you can drill down. Like I right now I'm looking on the data from 2017, and the charts are pretty much the same across all of these years. The Windows is definitely top one with almost 74%. Then there is the OS X with almost 15%, and Linux with almost 4%, which is small. It's those are not the big numbers, but I don't think that these numbers are actually related to like how good and how reliable and all the other stuff the operating system actually is. Because let's be real, whenever someone grows up to the age when he decides like, hey, I need to buy the computer or whatever, they don't really think in terms of the operating system. The only thing that they will do is go to the store and say like, hey, I need a laptop or a desktop, something on a budget, I don't want to spend too much. Well, there's more than 90% chance that they will actually land on the Windows machine, and they will just start using it, and it's going to be mostly convenient and easy because, well, everybody around are using the Windows. But I do think that eventually this might change, and the privacy could be one of the things that could force this direction and change the statistics of the operating system usage globally, especially now when like AI is becoming a thing. And I believe all of you can agree that it is growing like faster than you can actually think about it. Like 2 years ago, and compare how it is now, it's like crazy. So it's even crazier to imagine how it's going to look after another 2 years or maybe 5 years. I don't think that we really can imagine that at all. And the thing is that all of this AI stuff, it is not limited to like ChatGPT or some LLMs that you can run online or on your servers, whatever. It's also affects the hardware, because like right now the new release of the Microsoft Copilot plus AI with NPM, I think they were called processors, so the built-in AI engine in the hardware. And think about it, AI, like what's the most important thing for the AI? It's the data to learn on it. And all of the computers, all of the operating systems and Windows and whatsoever are sending some telemetry data to the, let's call it, headquarters. Like your Windows is sending quite a lot of stuff to the Microsoft, and you cannot really control what exactly it is sending, and it's not that easy to find against it. And like if again we talk about this Copilot stuff, there is one of the greatest features that they're saying is like the, I don't remember how it was called, the snapshot or whatever. So basically your machine is recall. I think it was called recall. So your Windows machine is going to be taking the snapshots of your desktop, of your laptop, and store all of that stuff to see like what you were actually doing at the time, what kind of web page you were browsing, what kind of applications you had open, with what text inside, what charts, data, whatever, everything. And potentially like it's a good thing, because the main purpose of it like is that we do forget something. We do forget many things. Sometimes we know that, hey, I was looking for something yesterday and there was this whatever thing that I need to find now, but I cannot remember what the site was actually called and whatever. So with the recall, you can just search with the patterns, and based on the snapshots, the Microsoft Windows will tell you what it is, which sounds great. But as I said, like it raises the privacy concerns, and over the years, I'm more than sure that it's going to become even crazier. And if we talk about like disable this, and after raising this concern, there was a quick response from the Microsoft like, yeah, all of this stuff is, it's possible to disable it. So it's optional, but optional means that by default, it's going to be turned on, which means that again, more than 90% of the Windows users who don't even know about it and don't understand what it can possibly do will never find a way how to actually disable that. And even if they will do, I think there's quite a high chance that after whatever upgrade of your Windows system that is coming quite frequently, all of those options will be again turned on to sort of improve your Windows experience. So the privacy is becoming a huge concern, and there will be some attempts to find a ways how to fix that. And somewhere in the middle right now is the Apple MacBooks OS X, and I think like they're more thinking about the privacy, at least now. They're not chasing so much and getting so much involved in all of this AI race, but that is a way how Apple always been. They are not into these things like from the beginning. They jump into the race somewhere in the middle with something unique of their side. And also let's talk about like the security in terms of how easy it is to get some viruses, someone hacking you and whatever. Apple is more safe, Linux is even more safe, but it doesn't mean that the Windows don't know how to actually secure their operating systems. It's just simple as that all of the bad guys, the hackers, whatever, that are creating the viruses and backdoors and everything, of course, they're going to focus on operating system that is used by 80% of all the computer users. And if those numbers will change drastically, let's say the Windows drops to the 15% and macOS right now will be 90%, there's going to be definitely very many attacks and different viruses and backdoors and whatever meant and created exactly to attack the OS X, and then they will have the same problem. And then there's Linux, like, which is since forever, right? But the main problem with the Linux always was the ease of use. But I think it's like a stigma, and people still think that it's very complicated, and I will not be able to do that. I'm just want to use the Windows because it's easy, and the Linux will be complicated. But the thing is that not necessarily. Linux is also growing together with everything in time, not only the Windows and not only the Apple devices. So you can actually find the Linux distribution, which is going to be very much like Windows. As example, the Pop OS by the System 76, like it is a Linux, it is a separate distribution, but the thing is that it's like very user friendly. And if you will Google like what is the most user friendly and Windows like Linux distribution, this will be one of the versions that's going to pop up, but not the only one. So you have a choice, and you can choose between all sort of different distributions. And if you install the Linux, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you will have like the black terminal where you will have to write the command lines and create some scripts just to open the browser and browse the internet. Absolutely not. Things are becoming much easier, and most of the things that people are using regularly, like internet, office, some other applications for day-to-day work or whatever they do at home on their desktops, is also available on the Linux. And Linux will offer you the most of the privacy that you could even think. And if you do a little bit of the research and tailoring around, you can even increase the privacy and change the things that you don't like to the way how you would like them to be. So essentially, I do think that Windows will be your nightmare for the privacy. With Apple, we still don't know where it's gonna go, and the Linux is definitely the best choice for the data privacy. And I myself, I'm using Windows, right? I'm not so much stressed about all the privacy and whatever. I do understand that I'm not like the some celebrity, whatever, so not the someone who people will try to hack and steal some data. So I used Windows just because I have it on my work laptop. I used it's the MacBook Pro, and for all of the home lab and other stuff like setting up some services and applications, I use the Linux. So basically I use all three of them. But the thing is that the Linux is becoming much more accessible, and eventually there might be a turn that the people actually start to use Linux more, and it's a matter of I believe couple of years when it's going to become more accessible, more user friendly, and whenever you have a chance to install it like easily and have it on your system without a hustle, without editing hundreds of configurations files and whatever, it could become much more popular. So I don't know, like, again, looking on the charts in the history since 2017, many things were changed, right? The internet is absolutely different nowadays as it was 7 years ago, but the charts don't change a lot. We can see that there was, I'm not sure what it is related to, but somewhere in April to 2023, there was a big drop in Windows. Maybe it's just a glitch on a graph, who knows? But also there was a raise on the OS X. Probably it was the could be release of the M1. I don't actually, or M2. M2 probably was in 2023. But again, like, I do think that things will change in the internet and in the choice of the operating system. Let me know what you think about it, and I don't know, we can come back to this video after 5 years and see where we are. And maybe I am completely wrong. I probably, like, again, from these 73.9% of the Windows users, how many percentage wise people actually care about those things? I do believe that the majority don't, and they just want a computer and they don't care about anything else. So let me know your thoughts in the comment, and thank you for watching this. Just my considerations and opinion on all of this, and we'll see you in the next videos. So see you later and goodbye.
Okay.
Choosing the right Linux distribution is...
Shut up. All right. Now I want to back that up. And
So let's talk a little bit about operating systems. And I believe all of you can agree, like, whenever
I bring this up periodically because a lot of people don't know how to use YouTube. Underneath the video itself, you have some comments about it. And this more, if you click it, it gives you more information. You also can download a show transcript, meaning you can read what was being said. Also, below that are comments. This guy here has already gotten 214 comments from other people, and this video is been viewed 10,155 since January 19th, 24, when he put it up. That ain't too bad. That's pretty good response. And then you'd have to read through it. A lot of this, the comments are pretty much useless, but periodically reading through these things, I find a nugget of information about something I didn't know and want to research further. So I'm letting you know, you gotta go more than just the video. You gotta find out some of the details, because they may have links to other information you may want or need. They may have transcripts. They one second here. Oh boy, he finally got in. But also too, sometimes on some of the videos, they have a timestamp listing of sections of their presentation, and you can jump to a specific topic within the entire video. Bob Baxter, good to see you, but I don't know what your problems have been, but it must have been one doozy. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I just got logged in and
That's
it worked
okay.
this time. I don't know what I did different. I've
I
been
don't
into your
either.
meetings many times before.
I
I'm doing
honestly don't know either, Nat. But you weren't alone. There was one other person that I was also trying to help.
well,
But
thanks.
thank you for showing up. we had to start, and we started late as is. You'll have to try and catch up on the video later on when it gets posted. I found that there's a Linux Mint blog. Most of them probably do have an ongoing blog, but it gets into things like software manager, the matrices, and a bunch of other things. If you really follow through this, you can download the distros from all these different countries. So as you can see, they're all over God's little green earth. And they get into new partnerships, joining the matrix. You have, sometimes they talk about new features and or coming features that will be coming down the road, as well as problems they may be knowing about and are being worked on to try and straighten them out. So this is something that everybody needs to know, and that's why I've got it in here. Next up, Linux Mint 21.3 Edge. What's Edge? Holy mackerel. We got another little distro, basically speaking. Basically speaking, people on Intel Generation 11 through 14 CPU, at least some of them are having great difficulty getting their regular distro of Linux Mint working. Well, they decided to release a 21.3 Edge version. It is for the newer hardware that can't seem to run with the 2.5-year-old level 5 kernel. This Edge contains two things: a 6.5 kernel and some updates to drivers to go along with the 6.5 kernel. And so far, this may give some people who can't get regular Mint to run an option. So that's what 21.3 Edge is about. And this article here is giving you additional pieces of information, etc. And you can even download, because they got a link here. So you can get the 21.3 only if you need it. But you still have to have 11th gen or higher from the little bit of information I've been able to farm out. I'm not saying that's an absolute. I'm telling you that I guess some people's hardware is not always being detected or working with the standard distro. Okay, next up here. Do you need to be a computer whiz to use Linux? 4 misconceptions debunked. You have to have a PhD to run Linux. Otherwise, you'll never figure it out. Anyway, misconception number 1. You have to be a nerd to use Linux. You might have to do with the fact that so many computer professionals rely on Linux. It's the choice of IT admins, programmers, scientific researchers. Linux success in technical fields may make it seem as not for ordinary users. But Linux is all around you, and you might not be aware that you're using it, because it's in our cars, it's in our appliances, it's in your security systems, in your security cameras, and God knows what else. And if you go to the hospital, you got a lot of medical devices using some form of Linux to make the device work and monitor your health. So accept reality. Linux is all around us. Any websites you go to, most of them will be running on Linux server. Linux does not run Windows program. Wine has been around for a long time. Perfect it is not. It is able to run some programs. It can run some games, not the real high-end bleeding edge games usually, but it can run many various types of Windows programs within a Linux distro. Third, you have to be a math whiz to use Linux. Just ask Earl. Earl has a degree in mathematics. You have to build everything from scratch. I only know of two distros where that's true. One is Linux from scratch, and one is Gentoo. Those do expect you to build them from scratch, but Gentoo is beginning to provide executable precompiled versions that some people may be able to use out of the box like we do all the other distros. So, what do you have to know? How to extract an ISO, and they give you some documentation for this, what kind of hardware you have. If you don't know what hardware you've already got a big problem because you can't talk to other people when you have a problem without knowing something about your hardware and how to find that information on your computer if you are asked some specifics about your computer. How to boot from a different device than the normal internal boot drive. And that varies based upon manufacturer and sometimes within models within a given manufacturer. So what will bring up the boot menu, there's probably at least 4 or 5 different keys that might be used. And the only way you're going to find out about these function keys, which ones bring up settings in the BIOS, what ones bring up the boot menu, what ones do some other features, you have to take and go to your manufacturer's site. If it's a home-built device, you have to look up the motherboard manufacturer's site for what that board is, and you can find out what function keys do work for that machine. Sometimes you can also get quick information from a Google search or a DuckDuckGo search to get the same basic information. Either case, you got to help yourself more and more because there are troubleshooters in Windows that are going away, and you may have to use an AI client to help you try and resolve your own problems before you go out and get help from people you know, including user group people, etc., etc. That requires you to learn how to phrase your problem and questions into AIs. If you do a poor job, you get poor answers. If you do a very good job of saying what you know about the problem, it's better. Many of the LLMs will also give you the ability to change from creative to balance to precise. When it comes to computer problems, I always use precise and ask my questions. If you've got kids, grandkids, great grandkids that are small enough that you got to read stories to, use the creative one. It'll hallucinate and give you great little stories based upon what you say you want the story to be about. Balance is kind of between the two, so you can get some good information, but it may also give you some misinformation because it really doesn't know how to answer it completely. Next, you have how to boot. Well, we already got that one. How to ask for help. This is one of the problems a lot of people have. They don't know how to ask for help when they got a problem. Part of that is some of the people they know, they own a computer shop. They expect to get paid. It's not cheap usually, but there are other resources available. Family members, extended family members. You have user groups like this one here. You have possibly coworkers if you're still a working person, etc. These are all resources you have available to tap. But there's a lot of people that I guess are afraid they're going to look or sound stupid, and so they don't ask for help when they need it and can probably get it. And part of that is true with Linux in the early days. There were a lot of people that knew stuff, and newbies would come in having a problem, and they would get flamed. And that's the worst thing these people could ever do, and that's why Linux is not as well adapted. But a lot has changed, even just in the last 5 years in Linux. There are people that can run Linux and never touch the command screen. But the command screen is where the power is, but you can ease yourself into that. So that's article. Next up.
There are a lot of videos on YouTube about why you should switch from Windows or macOS over to Linux, especially with the absolute state Microsoft is pushing Windows towards. While these videos are certainly helpful for understanding why you'd want to use Linux in the first place, I figured I'd give some advice on how to make the switch. Not in terms of installing the OS, but rather the things I feel that new users should know. So the first thing you should know is that Linux is not a standalone operating system. When you switch to Linux, the thing you actually install on your computer is a Linux distro. So what is a distro? Well, there are a bunch of things that make up an operating system, and in the case of Linux, a distro is basically a default selection of those things that work well together. However, most distros are standardized to some extent. For example, most distros use grub for the bootloader. Now, a question most beginners ask is, what distro should I use? It depends, but if I had to give a concrete answer, Linux Mint. Not because it's objectively the best or because it's my favourite, but having used it in the past, I can confidently say it's stable, easy to use, lightweight, and generally doesn't have compatibility issues. There's also Zorin OS if you want something that looks a bit more modern and polished, and both of these are based on Ubuntu. The second point kind of ties into the first point, and that is Linux is not Windows. Well, duh, obviously. What I mean by this is Linux doesn't function the same way Windows does. For instance, Windows uses the NTFS file system. Although Linux can read and write to NTFS drives, the main file systems would be things like ext4, Btrfs, and xfs. If you don't know what any of this means, don't worry. However, I'd argue the most significant difference, and probably the one that really matters, is how software is installed on Linux, which is usually done through a package manager, rather than downloading a file from your browser. Most package managers are command line tools. However, many beginner-friendly distros like Linux Mint and Zorin OS have a GUI program where you can install software, kind of like an app store. Speaking of software, the third thing you should consider is the software that you use. Not all programs run on Linux.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
I know, heartbreaking. This includes popular tools like Adobe Creative Cloud and Microsoft Office. So if you absolutely need to run Windows in some capacity, then I suggest dual booting, which is where you run Windows and Linux on the same computer. You run Linux most of the time and only run Windows when you need to. There are other solutions such as using Wine and running VMs, but they have their own problems. But if these programs are just nice to have rather than essential, then I would encourage you to look into software that does natively run on Linux, especially FOSS software, because a lot of those programs are designed for Linux first and then ported to Windows and macOS later. In my case, I was using quite a lot of free software on Windows, so I didn't have to learn a whole new workflow. And in general, quite a lot of software is natively supported on Linux, and of course you also have web apps, which I don't really like, but they are a viable option and a lot of people are already using them, and since they run in the browser, the OS is sort of irrelevant. The fourth thing I would recommend is taking the fact you use Linux into consideration. For example, when you buy new hardware. I'm not talking about devices which are basically plug and play like a USB mouse or a basic pair of speakers. I'm talking about things like printers, where drivers can be finicky. If you're looking for a printer, I would recommend the Brother HL1210W. Besides running very well on Linux, it's just a great printer overall. Likewise, if you're building a PC and you're buying a Bluetooth adapter, Wi-Fi adapter, network card, look up how well they play with Linux. I should also clarify that if any hardware or software isn't supported on Linux, it's usually not the fault of Linux, but rather the fault of the company choosing not to support Linux, especially if it's proprietary. So you sort of need this mindset of, if they don't support Linux, I don't support them. You know, you wouldn't buy an iPhone case for your Android phone and then complain that it doesn't fit. The fifth thing I would suggest is don't fear the terminal. Although the terminal might seem daunting at first, I'd encourage you to at least learn the basics of it. And the reason is because you may need to use the terminal for troubleshooting, and it's helpful to know the gist of the commands you're running. Plus, when you become good at the terminal, it's often faster to use it for certain tasks. For example, you can install multiple programs with just one command. The sixth thing I'd recommend is, before you install Linux, and even while you use Linux, have backups. Even if you're a Windows or Mac user, you should be making backups. Things can and do go wrong. It's not unique to Linux, that's just how computers are. Sometimes an update can break something, sometimes you can delete or mess something up because of human error, and sometimes you can lose data because of hardware failure. However, by keeping backups of important data, you significantly reduce the risk. Some distros like Linux Mint come with a tool called Timeshift. It can be used to back up your files, but it's more of a system restore tool. Also, keep a Linux Live USB on hand, because if you know what you did wrong, you can actually fix the problem within that live environment. Let's say you mess up your fstab file. And the final point is just about Linux gaming. Of course, not everyone plays video games, which is why I left this point until the very end. There's a misconception that you simply cannot play video games on Linux, but I've demonstrated on this channel that it just isn't the case. In fact, I've even pushed Linux gaming to its limits by running games on netbooks, cheap hardware, and even on ARM devices. So the fact that Linux can't game at all just isn't true. Now, it's true that not all games run on Linux. However, a lot of popular games are natively supported. And because of tools like Valve Proton, Lutris, and the Heroic Games Launcher, a lot of Windows-only games run on Linux about as well as they run on Windows. The main limitation with Linux gaming is with anti-cheat software. Games like Valorant and Fortnite, for instance, just will not work. However, things have gotten better, and I've gotten games like Dead by Daylight and Apex Legends to run on Linux. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed, I hope this advice was useful to you, and until next time, cheerio. There are a lot of videos on YouTube about why you should switch from Windows or macOS over to Linux, especially...
Sorry about that. Okay. Any questions so far? Don't forget, many of you are muted. No questions so far. Hey. Must be doing something right then. Unless it's all over your head, I don't know. Next up. And this ought to be a good one for a few of you.
What you guys, got another video here for you. Is Linux really for Windows users? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. And I'm going to show you basically Zorin OS and how to install it. And we're going to be talking about, is Linux really for you, the Windows user, and whether you should be maybe transitioning to Linux if you are on a old system. Maybe you're on an old Dell Optiplex or an old HP or a Fujitsu, or one of them old systems, a Dell Vostro or whatever it is you've got that's sitting there with Windows 10 on it and you can't upgrade to Windows 11. Should you jump ship when the end of life comes for Windows 10 and use Linux? That's what we're talking about here. Of course, you're going to get a lot of Linux people in the comment section below trying to convince you and saying, yes, you can, but they're not realists and they're not giving you the real information that you need to hear. And that's why I'm here, to give you my honest opinion. So let's assume that you're downloading, say, Zorin OS because you've read a lot about it, and it is a very good operating system. Now, I like Linux with what they do, and I'm not a hater of Linux like a lot of Linux users are a hater of Windows. But if you downloaded the ISO file, you are going to have to download a tool to burn the image onto that USB so you can install it. So we're going to use Etcher. And once you've downloaded Etcher here, so you're going to download the portable version or the installer, and then you can open this up and put your USB flash drive into the computer and choose your ISO image. So is Linux for you? Let's talk about the first thing. There are a few user-friendly Linux distributions designed to be more familiar to Windows users, just like Zorin OS here. These distributions will make the transition easier from Windows to Linux. With some patience and willingness to learn, you will be able to then get this installed like I'm showing you here and be able to use it on your old system. Many Windows users find that they can comfortably use Linux after a few months of practice, and that's what it's all about. It's whether you want to use another operating system, because it is a complete different beast compared to Windows. So I'm going to go through some of the things that I think you need to understand before you jump ship onto Linux, and then you can make your decisions. So first off, let's talk about the first thing that is going to be confusing to you, which is the number of choices of distributions to choose from for desktop environments. There is so many to choose from. You've got your Linux Mints, your Ubuntu's, you've got your Zorin OS's, you've got your Pop OS, you've got your Peppermint, and people just don't understand because they're coming from a Windows environment. They've never installed or used Linux in all their life. So all of a sudden they're faced with all of this choice, whereas Windows, you just get Windows and that's it. You get either Windows 10 or you get Windows 11, and both are very similar to each other. Now, if you go to a big box store, you'll probably see that there's tons of Windows systems in there. They all come preloaded with Windows, and if you're going to buy a Mac, you're going to get a macOS system on it. You don't very rarely get a system coming preloaded with Linux. Most people have never even used Linux or even heard of Linux operating systems, and that will make the transition a super difficult and steep learning curve for that person. Another thing that you might want to know about is the hardware support. There is still lots of hardware out there that just doesn't work with Linux, and that's a big problem. It's gotten better over the years, and it's still nowhere near as good as Windows at just plugging something in, putting a driver on, and it works. And you can even get old hardware working on operating systems, and that's the difference. So people are used to that simplicity, whereas with Linux you might have to go in and do a bit of tinkering to get things working, and this is where it makes it difficult for the average user that's going to be going over to Linux. Now, another thing that you need to understand is most people have spent their entire life using Windows. They've been at school and they've been taught Windows, and it's the industry standard. This is what it is. And most people don't even know what Linux is. So it's going to be difficult. It's as simple as that. You are now going on to a different operating system. If you've not used it before, yes, it's got a lot easier to use Linux, but you're still going to need to go into a terminal window every so often and run a bunch of terminal commands. And if you don't know what that is, it's going to be difficult for the average user. So another one is, if Linux is so much better than Windows, why don't most people use it? That is one of the biggest questions that people always ask. And one of them is just simply lack of software. There are people who need certain software that just does not work on Linux or is not available on Linux. For instance, Adobe products, Office, and many others. Even some gamers who want to play games are not compatible with Linux. Also, they do not work on Linux. You may need to configure them a little bit. And with Windows, it just works. Not having programs like Microsoft Office and Adobe Suite really does matter to a lot of people. Things like LibreOffice and GIMP are just not industry standard. Yes, they're great programs, but they're just not used in a professional environment. Most people are trained on these products. And again, this is why Linux will never surpass Windows, because you would have to retrain the whole of the professional industry to use GIMP instead of Adobe Suite, and it's just never going to happen because it's way better than what GIMP is. And then you got poor support for 3D graphics chips and graphics drivers that are just not supported very well. Manufacturers are unwilling to provide, support for Linux. So here we have Zorin OS installed on this system here, and you can see it's come pre-bundled with LibreOffice, which is a replacement for, say, Microsoft Office, because it won't work on here. And you've got a bunch of stuff on here to get you up and running. There's a browser here, and there's also some other software that's come pre-installed in here, which is going to help you, like remote software here as well. So what you're going to have to do is you're just going to have to learn to accept Linux for what it is and basically learn it and use the software that is available with Linux. It is not Windows. There is a lot of stuff on Windows that will not work on Linux. You have to get that through your head and just basically grasp it for what it is. Now, if you're one of these people that are just using YouTube, doing a bit of email and surfing the web, then Linux might be okay for you. And that's the thing. It might be okay for you, and you might be a quick learner. But there's a lot of people, the majority of people, it's just not going to be good enough for them. And because they're so used to Windows. Another thing you're probably going to hear a lot of is it can revive old computers and boost performance. Well, a Linux user will say things like it's lightweight architecture and it runs faster than Windows 10 and Windows 11, and these sorts of things. But what you have to still remember is, yes, it might boost boot up times, but you still got the same old PC, the same processor, the same RAM, and the same old hardware. It's like putting lipstick on a pig and calling it beautiful. It's not going to make it any faster. You are not going to be able to render videos faster. It's going to still be rendering videos on that same old system. The data bus is still going to be traveling data around that computer with its limitations that it has for that 15-year-old or 10-year-old PC, or however old your PC is. It doesn't really matter. It's still never going to be the fastest PC in the world. It is what it is. That hardware will have its limitations, and you can't boost hardware performance by installing Linux. It's just never happened. So at the end of the day, you have to make these decisions on whether it's time to build or buy a brand new PC, or you can install Linux and use it. Now, as you can see here, I'm showing you around Zorin OS. It's a usable operating system. It is doable, and you can use it as a very nice OS, and there's plenty of them to choose from that are very nice too. A lot of people may be thinking I'm bashing Linux here, but I'm not. I actually quite like Linux in a sense of I can use Linux, and the problem is I know not everyone is the same level or skill level that I am, and this is the thing. You've got to think about the average user or the beginner user, because most people are at that level, and they are just probably not going to be able to transition over to something like this. Yes, it's not as hard as what people make out, but it is when there's things going wrong and the support is not there and you're looking for help, it's not as freely available on the internet as like Windows is. You do a search and up will come a fix for something. Again, you're going to need to dip into the terminal and learn how to use terminal, because eventually you will need to go in there and do a bunch of commands, and copy and pasting commands is just not going to cut it, especially if you don't even know what those commands are doing. And this is something that you're just going to have to get used to. A lot of anti-cheats for games don't work on Linux, and there's a bunch of other stuff that you're going to run into. If you're a gamer, forget about it. It's just not going to work very well for you if you're an out-and-out gamer. So they were just some of the pitfalls that you may fall into if you are going to be jumping ship to something like Linux. Zorin OS looks absolutely amazing. It really does. They've done a lovely job with this operating system. All I wanted to do today is give you some food for thought when the time comes to either decide to build a brand new computer or buy a brand new computer, or use your old computer with something like Zorin OS. There is plenty of options available out there. If you want to see a video on some of the best options available for Windows users for Linux distributions, I'll be happy to make that video for you. And if you're going to decide to use Linux, then embrace it and learn about Linux, and obviously use the software that comes with Linux. Don't be one of those users that distro hop and then also end up installing VirtualBox with Windows on it so you can go into Windows whenever you need to run whatever software you need to run, because that is not embracing Linux whatsoever, and that is still having one foot in Windows. And before people start lighting up the comment section, this is not a...
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. One thing that he did bring up, or the previous one, dual booting. Normally, dual booting means you got one drive in your computer, and you're sharing some of the space that Windows currently is taking up to put in a Linux distro. I'm totally against it. Now, there is the possibility of putting in a second drive, installing the Linux to the second drive, and it will be a better environment, but I still don't even really recommend that. Personally, a lot of people have a lot of old computers laying around. Some people like going out to yard sales, garage sales, etc. Even Goodwill and some other places may have computers they are selling dirt cheap that you can pick up and probably use as a dedicated Linux box. Now, that said, you don't want to get too old of a machine, so you have to learn to figure out how old the computer is. If it's between about 2011 build or newer, you're okay. If it's older than 2011 to 2008, you might, depending on the processor, be able to use that machine. But when you start getting older than 2008, you've got to get into real light distros of Linux. And that means you, in a sense, can be giving up some of the features you would like to have on the machine because it's so old a hardware. So keep that in mind. You're talking 2008, 16 years old. So we're talking hardware that's older than 16 years old. I would say probably forget it. It needs to probably go to a recycling center. That's my opinion. And I have old hardware, so take that with a grain of salt. Now, this one here, some Linux Mint customization. Now, I'm only going to play part of this. This goes 27 plus minutes. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, so I'll play some of it.
This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Welcome to the channel. My channel is all about making things affordable, practical, and easy. And as you saw, we're going to take a Linux desktop, this plain Jane desktop, and we're going to customize this. But we're not just doing that. I made this video for beginners as well. People that are interested in Linux, maybe how to install Linux. So we're going to go through the install process. It's really simple, really easy. It's going to be fast. And then we're going to go and customize the desktop. If you're already a Linux user and you just want to see the customization that I'm doing here, then you can go in about 12, 13
Tim,
minutes.
my
And
apologies.
that's when the customization
I'm not
starts.
saying anything but you
But my
drinking
whole
your cup.
purpose of this is I just want to open people's eyes on the world of
What were you saying, Bob?
All I see is you. Are you playing a video?
Yeah, because I can see it on my screen.
Wow. Nope.
Looks fine. Looks fine to me. You may need to change your view.
Yeah, maybe it's a view that go up in the upper right corner area for views, and maybe
Okay,
the
I'm on speaker.
No, you don't
No.
want to be.
You want to
View
be
is either standard
or
or
gallery.
side-by-side gallery.
I've got speaker. I've got gallery. I've got
Yeah,
multiple
select
speaker.
gallery,
Gallery. I'm on gallery right now.
and you're not seeing this.
I'm seeing 3 times 3, 9 screens. Most of them people.
You got
So
something.
you're not getting the share.
No.
I'll break it and reshare.
Now I'm seeing something.
I don't understand why you didn't and everybody else
Linux
did.
and the Linux desktop and how easy it is. It's point and click. We're not going to the command line to do any of this kind of stuff. Everything's just point and click and we're done. Anyway, let's get started.
Okay, so I'm going to go through this really quick because we've got to get on the desktop. So I'll leave these links. All the links will be in the descriptions below, but we're just going to go here to Linux Mint to download, and there's going to be what they call. So we're going to download the Cinnamon version, and we're going to download the Edge version. The Edge version is for PCs, you could say 5 years or newer. If you have an older PC, you can just do the Cinnamon version, but we're going to go ahead and do the Edge version. I've already downloaded it just to save time. And then also what we're going to do, it depends on if you have your own, if you have a way to create a bootable disk drive to install an operating system, then you can use that, or you can use Balena Etcher, and I'll have this again in the description below. And this is just the portable version. In other words, you don't have to install it. It's just a standalone exe file. So we'll open this up, and we're going to select our file, and we're just going to select it from the download, and we're going to do this Edge one, and then we're going to select our target, and we're going to do this right here, and yes, you can see it's 500 meg. So then we're going to flash this, and it knows that it's a big drive, so it says, are you sure you want to do that? But yeah, this is just a portable NVMe drive. We say yes, and then we're just going to let that go. After it's done, we can just pull it out and we can install Linux Mint. That's all there is to it. Okay, so here I am at my boot menu again, according to your BIOS and everything. How you get into that, you'll have to look that up. Mine's F9, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit this, and now it's just going to start booting that up, and it'll come up here and it'll say start Linux Mint, and of course we're going to hit yes, and then it will start it. It'll load up Linux Mint. Now it's not installing Linux Mint. It's going to give us a live version of Linux Mint so that we can try it out if we want to. And this is the advantage of Linux. Most Linux distributions allow you to try it from a thumb drive or whatever you're booting up with. So in a minute here, we'll just go ahead and go into that. Okay, so here we are at the Linux desktop, and this is what I mean how you can try it out. Now it is showing the drive that I'm going to install this on. Normally, if it hadn't been formatted, it wouldn't show up here. So Here's an install disk right here, but it allows you again that you can just try it out. You can surf the web. You can do a few. You can install apps on here. Of course, the apps won't be any good once you turn it off. It just allows you to test the Linux distro out, and it's not just, again, not just Linux Mint. So you can kind of get a flavor for it before you even install it. But we're just going to go ahead and double click on this, and we're going to install this right now. The install is fairly straightforward and easy. Now, what I would recommend is I'd recommend you not
skip over this part.
If you're installing this on your personal system. Here, and Linux Mint comes with some Mint backgrounds, and that comes with some extra backgrounds that are in here. They've got to refresh. I haven't opened these up yet. It's fresh install, and so there's quite a few. If you go down, there's quite a few to choose from. But of course, I always like to just go grab my own. And if you had any pictures, pictures will be in here. Plus, you can also make a slideshow out of your background. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to go into pictures. I've already got them in here. I've got wallpaper here. I'm going to open these up, and we're going to go grab that wallpaper that we saw before. But all you have to do is click on it, and then you can get a preview of whatever is here, so on and so forth. And so we're going to get this one here. This is the one that we had. And so now we've got a wallpaper. So let's go back here. And the other thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to edit the panel just for a minute here. So what I want to do here is you can go to panel from here. There's the one here that we had. And what you're going to notice here, when that clock that was on here, there's a moon here. And I thought, oh man, if I put that clock over the moon, it'll kind of blend into the background. And so that's what I did. So now we got to make it transparent. And so all we have to do is just hide decorations right here and apply that. And now we're just going to set this over here, and we've got to make it a little bigger, so we'll cover that. I think that's about right there. Up a little more. And we'll just pull this over a little bit. Now these don't snap exactly the way you would want them to, so you kind of just have to do that. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do, and we're just about done, is we're going to go to themes. And when you go to themes, it's going to be on this simple.
Now I'm stopping there. Like I said, this is a long one. I skipped around a little bit, but he goes through the entire install process. If you're still a beginner, that gives you some resources there to be able to learn how to be able to install your Linux. Next one up. This is a short one, and I mean a short one.
Hey everyone, it's me, Houston. Today we're tackling a tech showdown. Linux Mint versus Windows. Which one is the ultimate champion? Let's find out. We all know Windows, right? It's been around forever and tons of people use it. That's for a reason. It's got a massive library of programs, from awesome productivity tools to creative software you know and love. Plus, it's usually pretty easy to figure out, and most hardware just works with it straight out of the box. Now, let's be honest, Windows isn't perfect. Those licenses can cost some cash, and sometimes you get stuck with programs you never wanted. Plus, catching a virus can be a real headache. There's another option, Linux Mint. It's completely free and open source, which means no license fees for you. And guess what? It's actually designed to be user-friendly, especially for folks coming from Windows. The Cinnamon desktop feels kind of similar, so you won't be totally lost. The best part? You can customize Linux Mint to look and work exactly how you want. Plus, it's generally more secure and runs great on even older computers. Of course, there are some things to consider. The software library isn't quite as big as Windows, although there are often alternatives out there. Also, some things might work a little differently, like installing programs. But hey, that's where the awesome Linux community comes in. Alright, let's break it down. Here's a quick comparison of Windows and Linux Mint. So, which one wins? Honestly, it depends on your needs. If you absolutely need a specific program, stick with Windows, but do a quick search to see if there's a Linux option first. If ease of use and tons of compatible hardware are your priorities, Windows might be the way to go. But if you love customization, security, and saving some cash, Linux Mint is a fantastic choice. Plus, you're open to exploring new software, which can be a lot of fun. So, thinking about making the jump to Linux Mint? Don't worry, there are tons of resources to help you out. You can find amazing tutorials online, and there are awesome Linux Mint forums and communities full of helpful people. Making the switch might seem scary, but it's definitely not as hard as you might think. Alright, to wrap it up, both Windows and Linux Mint are great operating systems, but they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. The best choice really depends on what you need and what you value most in a computer. So, why not experiment a bit and see which one feels right for you? Let me know in the comments below which OS you prefer.
Okay, I'm going to end that one. The quality of the video, especially right in the center and down in the lower right area, that's something the creator of this video had a problem. He must not have reviewed his video before posting it, because that's not real good. Now, another thing that I want to bring up in the previous one, they said, why don't more people know and use Linux? Okay, first off, very few companies have Linux in their business, and they do not train their people on Linux. Number two, you have libraries that help a lot of new people learn how to use a computer that weren't getting that education in the work environment. They only do Windows that I've ever seen. There might be a few Macs around, but usually you will not find Linux. Third, our education system. How many schools do you know of that have and teach Linux to the student body? I haven't heard of any. So when you take those three areas alone, is it a surprise that there is such a small percentage of people using and knowing something about Linux? Not to me. All right, next up. Oh, this one's a goodie. This guy talks fast, so I'll be showing you one thing that I occasionally do show on meetings. Click the gearbox down here. Playback speed, I'm going to change it to 7.5, and that's still going to be fast, but I don't want to go down to half. This is another one that's pretty long, so I'm not going to play a lot of it. It's already past 8:30, so bear with it.
Today we got a Linux video, and that means our sponsor is Brilliant, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want a fun, efficient way to learn topics like data analysis, computer science, or mathematics? Well, Brilliant has a way for everybody, no matter how beginner or advanced. But Linux is growing, alright? We're above 4% now, which never would have been thought of years ago. Thanks to companies like Valve, big actual like tech firms, the actual push for Linux is pretty evident, okay? I'm not saying it's the year of the Linux desktop or anything. I'm saying that we're getting closer to a future where Microsoft has some healthy competition. And competition is good for everyone, right? Like, we can all understand that. Now, one of the reasons I don't use Windows is because of its weird telemetry and spying, and the fact that they're introducing pointless features like AI basically being forced into my installation. Now, that said, Microsoft Windows has this advantage of basically being entrenched. I believe the reason why Windows is so popular, personally, is because it just comes pre-installed on every computer your mom and dad buys, right? Your grandparents buy, you buy at a store. Think about it like this. You go buy a Dell computer, an Alienware, Alienware, whatever. You're buying any gaming computer on the market, even from vendors who build PCs for you. They usually give you an option to pay an extra $50 and buy Windows on top of it. But they never tell you we'll install Linux for you, and they got no reason to. Windows has this benefit of basically being entrenched in a way that no other operating system has. macOS only is able to be sold is because they sell MacBooks with the stuff pre-installed, ready to go. And there's very little, if any, Linux actual, Linux companies that release Linux on actual builds you can buy pre-built. Stuff like System 76 PCs and so on and so forth. But beyond all of it, it's basically meant for you to install and understand yourself. And Linux has kind of a weird rap. Like, if you actually search up Linux and scroll down a little bit, you'll find stuff like this. This scares people, okay? This video that I'm making is meant to be an entry point for people who just want to start, specifically people in my audience that like gaming. Some of you might like streaming. Some of you just want an actual competitive piece of operating system, but you want to understand how to get into it. And people who try to jump into the Linux community, unfortunately, there is a bit of elitism. There is a bit of people who want you to be computer science experts and not just regular computer users. This video is meant to be a very simple get in and understand. It's meant for people who have no knowledge about what Linux is. But yeah, anyways, when you look up Linux on the internet, you'll probably look at results like, is Linux legal or illegal? Like, dog, if that's the SEO we're working with, it's not good. When you look up Linux on YouTube, you'll find plenty of great channels. But one of the only criticisms I have of some of these actually great channels is that a lot of their content is not exactly geared towards somebody new. It's always geared towards bringing in Linux commands or this kind of stuff scares the average person. You understand? Like, nobody wants to look at a network terminal, a terminal like simulator from like back in the 90s brought today. You're gonna be messing with it, but honestly, we're just here to dive into Linux fresh and ready to go, all right? For somebody who has no experience. Anyways, introduction aside, let's talk about how to find your version of Linux. So what is Linux? Now, Linux, according to the old Wikipedia, is a family of open source Unix-like operating systems based on the Linux kernels, and they're typically packaged as a Linux distribution. So a distro is important. To understand, Linux comes in various different shapes and forms. So this list right over here, ladies and gentlemen, is all the different types of Linux distributions you can download and install today. Now, you might be looking at this list and going, oh my God, what do I pick? Where do I begin? So one of the things that I always find to be a bit of an issue when it comes to Linux is one of the first mistakes people make is they type in, hey, Linux for insert blah, blah, blah tasks, because there's not one specific distribution. People will try to find the one that's best for them. So again, there are distributions with their own pros and cons, but generally, in my opinion, you want to go with the one that's most popular in a general sense. So things like Ubuntu, things like Manjaro, Linux Mint, which is what we're going to be using for this video. To give you an example, even if you like scroll down and look through, just a random tech website, like here's top 7 best for gaming. You'll open this up and you'll realize, okay, well, they're just giving me the general choices like Ubuntu or Fedora and Manjaro, literally everything that we've mentioned so and so far. So again, don't get confused by any of this, like, these blogs or whatever. Just go with one of the more popular websites or the most popular distributions. All you have to do is get one that's well maintained. That's it. You can always tailor any distribution for any specific purpose by yourself as well. So here's Linux Mint, an operating system for desktop and laptop computers. It's designed to work out of the box. So again, all you need to do is go to their website, and it looks incredibly simple. They actually have Linux Mint 21.3. Virginia is what they call it. Now over here, they say they're good for multimedia, gaming, web, productivity, web design. Give it a try. You'll love it. So again, how to get this going is basically hit that big juicy download button. And here you got multiple different options. Now, every different Linux distribution comes with further changes to the desktop environment. The desktop environment is the user interface you're using as you browse and use your operating system. So some desktop environments are built for people that are coming from Windows, right? Like KDE Plasma. GNOME, for instance. Well, that's not really all that Windows. But then you've got people who are macOS users, and they might be using macOS-oriented desktop environments. Hell, there are desktop environments for people who just want their computer to look like a Windows 98 system. It's actually insane the amount of customizability. People in the Linux community call it ricing, whatever, where they actually customize their desktop to the point where it's like wholly their own. We're not going to go into it because honestly, I don't do it. I don't really care. I just like using my computer, okay? But anyways, you've got options like Cinnamon, which is what you want to download. You've also got Mate. You've got XFCE, which if you have a lighter computer, if you have a weaker system, an old computer, maybe from like a decade ago, this might be a better option because it uses less resources. And if you've got absolutely new hardware, try the Edge ISO. But generally, if you're in this, just start with Cinnamon, download it. That's the one that they push the most. Now, anyways, once you've downloaded it, you'll see that you've got a 3 gigabyte download right here. And it's time for you to actually copy this to an actual USB drive to install on real hardware. So at this moment, you want to get an 8 gig USB drive. Anything over 8 gigs works. Doesn't have to be massive. Remember, this is only a 3 gigabyte file. So grab a USB drive and just stick it into any USB port on your system. So as you can see, I've got an actual little USB plugged in, and here's where you're going to get another piece of software. So again, on the internet, you want to go and look for Balena Etcher, which is basically a software that's going to be used to flash this ISO file to the drive in an incredibly easy manner. So go over here, hit up Download Etcher, and basically find your operating system. So if you're on Windows, download the portable installation and go on forward. If you're on Mac, download the Mac installation. If you're on Linux like I am, you get the idea. Alright, so now that you have Balena Etcher, what you want to do is you want to flash from files. So click this.
Okay, I'm going to stop this one here because of the length of it. I went through about a third of it. And does anybody have any questions so far?
Can you hear me?
No, I don't want to.
Am I muted? No. I think one thing that threw me a little bit was when one of the first videos we saw there talked about the Linux Mint 21.3 Virginia.
Yes.
But I thought, maybe I misinterpreted it. I thought it was only for the people who had new hardware. But
No,
this
no, no.
last guy here seems to be talking about, no, it's for any hardware. So I'm
No,
kind of
we've been using 21.1, 21.2, then you disappeared, 1.3 came out. But they have a total of 3 different flavors of Linux Mint with also 3 additional desktops for just one of the 3 flavors. Flavor number 1 is the Linux Mint that has been around, that's made from Ubuntu. Another one is Linux Mint DE edition, Debian-based edition, but those may not run if you got some of the newest hardware that's less than 5 years old, because not all your hardware may work. That's where the Linux Edge, Mint Edge, and the current version is 21.3. Supposedly, Linux Mint 22 might be out in July or August. But, that's the last thing I heard.
So all 3 of those, Debian and Edge, and they're all 21.3, but they're
Yes.
just for different machines. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And when you get into the standard Linux Mint, which was the first one I mentioned, you not only have the Cinnamon desktop that the other 2 have, you also have a Mate desktop, and you have an XFCE desktop for real old hardware. I know you got some real old hardware, but I think it's too old even for Linux Mint XFCE to run on.
Okay.
Bob Baxter.
Yeah. Since I got in late, if you had posted anything in
Not yet.
chat about getting this information, I don't get it because I got here late. Could you repost it?
I haven't posted it yet.
Okay. Okay.
Usually I wait towards the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see here. Let's get rid of that one there. I don't have too many left, and I hope I can get to all of them. Here's a beginner's guide to installing Mint. It's another one. It's about 11 minutes long, but I don't feel the need to go into this one really, because we've already covered a couple other ones that help a beginner get the same kind of information. But you should review all of them if you're a beginner, because you may pick up little tips here and there in each one of them that may be very important. And I'm not joking when I say that. Another one here is Minty Fresh, a friendly introduction. Again, I'm not going to get into this one, even though it's only about 7 minutes long, because it's already near 9 o'clock Central Time. And I don't want to belabor this too much longer. Now, here's something I just came across. It's a flat pack called Pika or Pika backup program. I haven't looked at it yet. I haven't had time. But this is something that I want to look into and see how good it is as a backup program for a Linux environment. I have other ways of doing it, other software. Some of it's been mentioned in the past. I use a macro reflect on a stick to back them up. I used Clonezilla before. I used RescueZilla, and I also once used Deja view or something like that. It's a duplicating type environment.
Deja dupe.
Okay, Deja dupe. I couldn't remember the exact name. Like I said, it's quite a while ago that I messed with it, and I haven't looked at it to see if they've improved it. But thank you for that. But this is an interesting one that maybe we got to visit in the future. I'll see how much time I got to do it, to see if I can do any kind of presentation on it, at least an intro. And if anybody else wants to pipe in on this, let me know. And the last one I got here is another Linux Mint. Now this is again more geared toward the beginners, but it may also act as a refresher for those that are not heavy Linux Mint users. This is a complete tutorial. Please note, this I'm only giving you the first version. You have over here 7 more videos to go along with this one. So there's a total of 8 videos to go through. And I have some other tutorials as well that I'll probably bring up next month on the handout. So I'm hoping this gets most people where they need to be. I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to see if I can find my stupid article. And I'm going to copy. I'm going to go to chat. Paste it. Okay. The only thing that you will find out in the chat, since nobody else put anything out there, is my handout. And if you click on that, you should be able to download it to your computer. And it'll go in your download folder. Just click on chat down in the bottom bar of Zoom, and you'll bring up a white panel. And the one item out there is my handout. Just click on it. Anybody got any problems downloading the handout?
It's working on it now.
Working on it? I worked on it. For years, I've worked on this one.
This time. Nope.
Got it okay here.
Okay. Now, I don't know if Sanford got back yet, so I'm not certain when this video will be up, but I would assume by the end of the week. If anybody like Bob Baxter wants to see the video either before then, let me know. Or if you don't see it by the weekend, let me know. I have an alternative way of getting you a link to view the video. Anybody got any questions, comments about tonight's meeting or problems that haven't been aired out?
I'm okay.
That'll be a first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so Tim, I have a question, but let's get the rest of your business done. I want to go back to my logging in. I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my process for doing this sort of thing is that when I get the link, I put it in my Google Calendar. So then when the meeting comes up, I've got it all right there in that one place. I find that oftentimes if I put in the link, I have to remember to go in and change my name. If I put in the meeting code and then the passcode separately, I can change the meeting name or my name as I'm setting that up, and then I don't have to worry about that step. I'm looking at the South Suburban Computer Club for last month, I think it is, off my calendar on another computer here, and I noticed that the meeting code and the code that's in the link appear to be the same. The passwords, I've never been able to match between the two. I noticed on the meeting today that what's in the link and the straight English code and the passcode, well, the meeting code does not match what's in the link.
Okay, that I will mention there. We've had a few times in the past about 2 years where we've had various meetings that all of a sudden things didn't work right, and we had to reset them up. And there's a possibility that happened on the Linux SIG. I'm not sure about the South Suburban. I'll have to check the meeting code and pass phrase to make sure that they match up. But we always send out a, at least I do, CCS June Linux SIG meeting invite. And there's also one that's a meeting announcement. The announcement doesn't contain any link information. It's just for some people to remind them a meeting is coming up so they don't end up possibly scheduling something and can't make the meeting. At the same time, the invite always has the link, but there's a possibility we had a change. I didn't remember to check the ID code and pass code. So I'll have to check mine, and I'll try and get Sanford to do the same. So far, I don't think there's been a problem with Ed Keating's meeting with the Northwest group that was last Thursday. But thank you. Maybe that's the key to all this. But I am a little puzzled. The only time I log in with a link is when I am the host. That's why it says Zoom CCS. Once in a blue moon, I might change that. But all my other machines, I just click on that URL link and it comes up with these names. I don't change them other than the very first time. And why yours keeps changing at the moment, I can't tell you. Even when I go to APCUG's meetings, I never have to change my name unless something interfered with it, and it'll usually say Zoom CCS. Then I have to change it. But even in APCUG, that's very rare.
Well, my Zoom account uses my ID is my email. So when if it picks that one, I have several others that don't have that, but that's the one I've registered, though I don't pay for it. I'm too cheap.
Okay, I don't know.
I did notice today on one of the tries that I did it on this little Surface that I'm using right now, when I clicked on the link, it brought up my Google Calendar.
Okay. I don't know exactly why. There's something you
I don't
did
either.
in the past.
Yeah, it surprised me. Yeah.
Well, you probably did something in the past that linked that URL to the calendar, and that's why it brought up the calendar. It triggered it. But the other thing that I just thought of that might be a factor, do you have a Zoom free account?
Yes, I have a Zoom that I don't pay for.
Okay,
Free.
yeah, I have a Zoom free account too. That's where it gets my name on each computer. And that's why I'm, I guess, mystified why you're having such an issue.
Well, is the name on your account when you log into your account? Is your user ID your email, or is it just
No,
your
it's
name?
just my name.
See, mine, it's a habit. So many of them, that's what they want. I just give them my email to register.
That could be. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So then when I use the Zoom, when I use the link to go in there and it's happening to use that Zoom account, then it puts that out there. And if I put it in piece by piece, when my first one comes up and I put in the code, I can change the name so it's just the words, not the email link.
Don't know. It'd be all guesswork right now.
Right.
Dennis, I know you.
I appreciate your time to work with me on this. Thank
Not
you.
a problem. I'll double check it because, like I said, we have had a few times where suddenly nothing worked, and we had to go out and make new links, etc., and that changes the passcode, usually not the ID. And it may be that I and or Sanford forgot to also change the passcode to whatever it is right now with that link. So that could be our problem, and I never thought of it, to be honest. But also, too, out of the people that have attended tonight, you and Earl are the only ones that are doing the meeting ID and passcode and not using the URL link. Everybody else got in with the link. I don't know what else to tell you.
I understand.
Dennis, I think you were going to ask something.
Well, it's been a while. I was just trying to refresh my memory. Bob Baxter or Jeff
Yes.
there, are you guys currently Linux users, or you're kind of where I am and kind of trying to get into it?
My answer is yes. With the help of our local Linux group, I have built a pair of Proxmox servers and run some. I run a whole backup database that I used to have on a Windows server, 2012, and that's outside its useful life, and that's been running since December. But I'm still learning. I do not love command code, but I recognize it as something I need to work on. I'm also running Manjaro on a couple of machines. I tried Mint, I got it to work, but my group that I work with here in the greater Seattle area is more into Manjaro.
I used a Manjaro, and I still have it some. I also play with Endeavor, which is Arch-based, and Garuda, which is Arch-based also. And I have Gecko for RPM base, which is a polished version of OpenSUSE. And I have several distros on the Debian base, which includes Debian, Ubuntu, Mint, MX Linux, Linux Lite, etc.
This Manjaro does that have a GUI interface or no?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Three or four of them.
Most of them have a GUI interface. Very few do not. Plain Arch Linux does not. But a lot of people took the Arch-based Linux, added desktops to it, customized it, and you got all kinds of Arch-based versions. But Debian-based distros are considered the easy ones, especially for beginners. When you get into RPM, like Fedora, which came from Red Hat, and OpenSUSE, Gecko, those are medium weight distros that are a little more difficult, but they're also more professional. So you got a little bit more there to learn than, say, a Debian base. Arch distros are bleeding edge Linux technology. Debian is exactly the opposite. They take so long to get in new features trying to make certain that it does work right, you don't see many updates for a Debian base. But Ubuntu and all the derivatives like Mint and MX Linux, etc., came from Debian. But what those people do, Conical Development Company, took Debian and created Ubuntu on that base, and a whole lot of other distros either use Debian as their base or they use Ubuntu as their base. And that's why there's so many different flavors of Linux. But I would not recommend for a beginner an Arch base. I'm not even sure I would recommend a RPM base. Fedora might be one, but SUSE I liked a lot years ago, and OpenSUSE carries on with that. But Gecko makes a polished version. That's what Mint pretends to be in taking Ubuntu's development, making its Mint with the Cinnamon desktop, Mate desktop, and XFCE, a polished version of Ubuntu code. Bob, you seem to have something. Okay. Now, I want to mention here for Dennis's benefit, since he's been away for quite some time, I also was kind of surprised James Kincaid didn't show up. I'm trying to work with him also on getting on Linux. Dennis, I may be able to work with you and him to help get you a running system. Now, I don't remember all the details of what we were doing before you disappeared by any means, etc. But Dennis Kincaid doesn't want to spend a lot of money, but he had an old Passport backup drive that was only 250 gigabytes in drive. He says there's nothing of value on it. So we're going to put, for him, Linux on that external drive through a USB port so he can run Linux without disturbing the Windows that's running on the system right now, which is only Windows 10, and is going to be a dead product unless you pay money. And we don't know how much money they're going to ask for. Education people, you're talking over a course of 3 years, a total of $7. But a business might be spending well over $450. The personal computer user, we don't know yet. And they're going to wait until near the end of life of 10 to announce what each year is. And the first year is the lowest price. Then they double the price for the second year, and they double it again for the third year. Because they want to get you off of it. They don't want to keep supporting it. And that's it. You get 3 years max, and you're on your own. Okay? And all you're going to get on those 3 years are security updates. No bug fixes and no new improved software, etc. So they want you to go to 11, period. If that means you either have a machine, your 3050 will run 11, but unsupported. I guarantee it. I got a system here that I logged in with that, bottom line, that computer is more than 15 years old. It will not run the next version of Windows 11, but I'm running 11 on it right now. And I've got other unsupported systems. I also have a whole bunch of computers here that run 11 supported. Now they're coming out with Windows Copilot Plus PCs. These contain a neural processing unit in the system, and they are going to be super heavy on AI. Most people do not need a Copilot Plus PC. Just get a plain Windows 11 running machine, and I use old hardware. I am using 8th, 9th, 10th generation processors running Windows 11 supported. So it's quite doable. Your 3050 is either a 6th or a 7th generation processor that does not run supported 11. That's why you either run 11 unsupported, or you move to Linux, or you go out and buy a new machine to replace that 3050. And I've got information I can provide on machines that will take and provide you a running environment for Windows 11. Some of them look like this. This is a mini computer, and it measures about 7 inches square and about 1.25 inches thick. If Bob shows his desktop, he has a Nux. It's just under 5 inches square and either about 1.25 inches thick or about 2 inches thick for a high version, from what I know. I don't have Nuxes. Though I might consider getting one for a Linux machine, because those machines are a lot cheaper than the ones that will run compliant Windows 11. But because most of my machines I bought before this year, and so the prices have changed quite a bit and gone up. So I'm letting you know about that. Also, I have SFF machines. I have full normal desktop machines. There's Bob Premick holding up a Nux. And it's really right at the bottom there that that's the Nux, and then he's got something sitting on top of it that gives him expanded capabilities. So it's a case where basically
That not 100% Linux then?
I will tell you just a few things. The lid is from Go Right, and it just simply gives me a couple of USB 2 ports for the mouse and the keyboard. I think.
As far as these computers that we're talking about, any of them can run Linux.
Yeah. I run Linux off of an external SSD, which is USB. In this case, it's Thunderbolt style, and it's just running Linux off of an external drive.
And
with USB boot.
The only thing I've got to say is, one, I seldom ever buy a new computer. I buy used stuff and parts, and that's it. Generally speaking, the other thing is that any computer can run Linux. I advise you to avoid the Intel 14th generation chip. They've been having lots of problems of the systems crashing. They have very few ideas of workarounds, but one of them seems to be possibly the voltage setting on some people's computer. These may be people who are overclocking. And usually in overclocking, you increase the voltage. Or there's an outside possibility. Some of them are doing what's called under voltage. And most of these are, you have to have machines that are have a very advanced BIOS. Now, the other piece of advice I'll give you, consumer grade PCs, if you get them to last more than 5 years, you're doing good. I have been mostly getting business class machines that came off of leases or businesses that went out of business and sold off all their computers, and there are resellers galore all over the place. And that's where I get a lot of my equipment through like eBay as an example. And bottom line is I know what I'm doing with the stuff because I'm a computer tech besides an ex-programmer analyst. So I'm able to get equipment as cheap as I can. And if it doesn't match everything I want, I get the other parts and I make a machine that gives me pretty much what I want out of the machine. So that's not for everybody. I grant you that. But there are a lot of community colleges in particular that have computer groups meeting at them maybe once a month that will help out people in their local community. There's one out your direction too, and I can't think of the damn name of it. It's is it Glenview Community College or something like that? And I don't know if they still do, but they did have at least once a month or more frequently meetings where people can come in with their computers and they will help set them up for those people, or if they've got a problem, try and resolve the problems or at least give them direction. Plus you got user groups and APCUG, third Wednesday, most of the time there is a Linux SIG. They had a good one last week on Wednesday. You'd have to wait for the July meeting for the next one. I recommend going to that. I usually attend unless something stops me from doing it, like passing away. So in general, we've got lots of options. The bad part is you got to understand right now, James Kincaid and you, Dennis, you're stuck on Windows. That's your only OS, other than you happen to have a Chromebook. That's fine. Jim Kincaid and his wife recently got a couple Windows 11 laptops. So they can keep on working on Windows. I use all the OSs. So that's where I come from. And you have about 14 months before the normal end of life of Windows 10 running on that computer right now. And so does James Kincaid. That means you got to get off the dime because you got to start, if you're going to go to Linux, you got to start getting your feet wet in Linux to see if you can deal with it and use it so that when end of life comes to Windows 10, your computer still works on Linux.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anybody else got anything tonight? I'm about talked out.
Hey, after,
Go ahead, Dennis.
just real quick, after the meeting here, could I just stay on with you, Tim, and talk to you for a couple minutes? Just you and me?
How much you paying?
Whatever you want.
Okay, $366 trillion. You got to pay all the taxes. I can't afford them. All right, I'll take that into account. Bob, you were going to ask something or say something.
Just agreeing with what you said about, Dennis, if you are going to move from Windows to Linux, by the time Windows 10 reaches its end of life, you should start pretty soon because it does take time to get your feet wet.
It takes time. You got to put in time and effort in order to pick it up. Watch some of the videos, read some of the articles. You got to keep your mind open to things that you never thought about before. Okay, and some things they're an enigma right now. That's where you got to use a group like this or the APCUG Linux group to ask questions to try and get some clarity for what's an enigma to you right now. And then light bulbs start turning on, and the light level keeps increasing as more light bulbs turn on.
Yes, there's a different mindset in doing Linux, a different kind of Zen than Windows. And Mac is still different. When I'm working in Linux, I find my whole sense of the world, of the universe, is different when I'm using Linux from when I'm using Windows. I have to think differently. I have to think about problems a little differently. And that's what you have to get used to, that it's a different mindset. It's not a lot different, but it's different enough.
You have to be malleable, meaning flexible, etc., because it is different. I had heavy Windows use myself, and when I picked up a Mac, I had no trouble getting very familiar very quickly with it. With Linux, I started off in the mid 1990s from a computer show, and that was a real bad time to be getting in. And it wasn't until this century that it started getting better, better, and better. And I still found a lot of things from my Windows world that helped me pick up Linux quicker. But it does take time. It takes effort. If you don't put the time and effort in, there's no magic pill to give you or a shot in the arm that's going to give you what you need. So you got 14 months to go, and it's going to come decision time. You're going to have to do something, because 10, unless you pay an extra fee each of 3 years for just the security updates to keep you safer on 10, you got to go somewhere else. You either got to go to 11, you got to go to a Mac operating system, which is expensive hardware, or you got to go to Linux. And I'll tell you, on a Mac, unless they change it, and there was talk about it, it used to be only supported for 5 years of hardware changes. I think they changed it to 7, and I know on Chromebooks they went from 5 years to 7 years, and now it's 10 years on modern Chromebooks. But nothing stays the same. Computers are changing basically every day, either the software and or the hardware. And in 1 year's time, so much changes. It's almost like, gee, my stuff, my operating system, if I haven't updated it, my hardware, if I haven't made any changes, is already obsolete. If you at least update the operating system and your other software on the computer that you use daily, you're still pretty modern for at least a total of 3 to 5 years. After that, you're on aging hardware that is going to get slower and slower. I've got another machine that's doing this same video. And bottom line is, it's running Windows 10. It's totally up to date. And it's about 4 to 5 times slower than this current old system next to it on an Intel chip running 11 unsupported. The 11 runs faster. I have tested out 11 on that Windows 10 system through a USB interface, which is only USB 2. That's half the speed of a USB 3 USB port. And it still runs the 11 through the USB 2 port faster than 10 on the drive inside the machine. That's reality. And I understand there's a lot of apprehension, some hesitation. A lot of it is some misinformation and old, outdated information. It used to be harder years ago. And the farther you go back, the harder Linux was. And in the last 5 years, so much has changed, it's not fun. So it's getting better and better. And there are a lot of people who can run Linux like Mint and never touch the command screen. But some problems you may run into, and you ask other people, they're going to tell you, open up a terminal and type in the following command or commands, and this will help you get your problem solved. So sooner or later, that's where you got to go in some learning capacity to slowly build up some knowledge. You're not going to have to know every command that was ever created and all the parameters. It's usually maybe up to a dozen commands that you'll use most frequently. Everything else, odds are, if you know the command exists, that's about all you remember. And you have to look up all the parameters that you may need to do whatever that command does. And that's the way it is. Computers are quite complex. If some people use power tools, those power tools are nothing in comparison to a computer in what it is capable of really doing. And it's going to keep going until, basically speaking, the computers of Star Trek, where you just talk to them. I think to some degree, Babylon 5 is another one, etc. You just talk to the computers like you talk to an Alexa device, because when you use an Alexa type device, you're talking to a computer. That's all there is to it.
And Alexa's getting an upgrade in their underlying technology.
Oh, yeah. Everything's got to upgrade at some point in time just to keep up with the times. And the big thing right now is AI, adding artificial intelligence so that it gets smarter than what it used to be. Next step is so far out, probably the earliest would be 5 years before you're going to get much more understanding, maybe cognizance to some degree in AI. But most of the AI advancements, they're going to be long after we're dead. 2050 is probably the earliest we get a chance of having a AI system that has pretty good intelligence to it. And some are even speculating it'll be 2100. How many of you guys are going to be here in 2100? I don't think I'll be there. I'll be lucky if I'm around by 2050. So I don't know what else I can tell you.
70 some years away.
Pardon?
The next century is 70 some years away.
That's why I say I won't be there. But
Yeah.
2050, there's a very slim chance I'll be there, but I ain't gonna bet any money on it. And we're keeping Jeff past his bedtime.
Not to mention me and my COVID recovery.
Yeah. All right. Anybody got anything? Last words? Otherwise, I'll say goodnight to everybody, and we'll go on from there.
The only